Well, welcome everybody to BATHICA Banter. And I tell you, my friends, I could not be more excited about our guest today. This is something I've been trying to put together for quite some time. And finally, the stars have aligned. Both of our schedules are allowing us to be in the same place at the same time for a couple of hours. So finally getting this done. And so happy to welcome Mr. Travis Stever, lead guitar player for the band Coheed Cambria, to BATHICA Banter. Say hello to everybody, Travis.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Gerry.
Oh, man,
Also a family member.
Yeah, I guess we should get that
get it right out of the
way. We are cousins, to kind of give you the family tree for Travis and I. Travis's grandparents are my godparents. His grandma Rose was my mother's sister. His mom Ellen is my cousin. So somehow I think that all filters down to Travis and I being cousins. Does that sound fair, Trav?
Yep, that's it.
But it's all good. Well, look, Travis, again, thank you. And where I like to start every interview is to have our guests share your journey. You know, what got you to where you are today? You know, what was the first time you picked up a guitar? When was the first moment you realized that this could be a lifelong journey for you? Please share that, if you could, with everybody.
You know, the lifelong journey part didn't come. The dream of wanting to be a musician. Oh, my cat's here. She might want to go out, so I'll let her.
That's okay.
But matter of fact, I should probably put her out because she's deaf. So she talks a lot. You know, I remember that I would play the guitar. My father, we'll get into all this, but my father, being a songwriter, guitar player, singer, songwriter, and guitar player, he had acoustic guitars laying around my whole life. When I was a little kid, I would pick them up and just, you know, do the usual, just hit anything.
Right.
I think that it was like later, probably at about 9 or 10, I was seeing videos of people playing acoustic more online on MTV, of course. I remember Guns N' Roses had Patience, and they all played acoustic in the video. So it was kind of that like, aha, like this acoustic guitar is kind of cool because Guns N' Roses are using it. So I started actually with picking up the acoustic first. And then, of course, I wanted electric. I mean, I listened to a lot of music, which we'll get into as a kid. There was a little break period in there where I didn't want to go near music because of fear, which is a crazy thing that I had happen as a childhood, but in my childhood. But I grew up with music all around. So I basically, you know, my father and my mother met as performers in a traveling production of Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah.
You know, and it was, so music was around me from the moment I was born. You know, as a guitar player and singer songwriter, my father continued to write and perform. You know, my mother went the other direction. You know, she was the breadwinner. You know, they split up, and she basically had to wrap her life in work. And, you know, kind of was disheartened by, you know, the entertainment industry is you know, let's not hold back. I mean, it's a pretty brutal place. So she didn't want to deal with that. So as talented as she is in music still to this day, she decided to go the other direction. And my father continued to chase the dream. So now, and both influenced me in a way, because my mother's work ethic, you know, basically came through, especially later in life as I've grown up. The work ethic to just keep going came through from my mother and my stepfather, who she would eventually meet and marry. And the chasing, the ambition to still chase the dream and to continue to write and always be part of music came from my father. And my stepmother, because she always was a massive cheerleader and supporter of all things music and art. On both sides, I had that, you know.
Yeah.
Was everybody a little hesitant when I said I'm going to go jump in the van with a band and live on the road for years? Yeah, of course. But you couldn't stop me, you know. But you know, I heard between the music I grew up on through them and what I, you know, siblings and friends, you know, I stumbled into, music became my lifeblood, you know.
Yeah. Well, you brought something up that I have to go back to, and that is your parents being a part of Jesus Christ Superstar. I saw that performance. I saw one of their performances, believe it or
I
not.
would love to get a hold of, you
Uh,
know, my father's been searching for footage of that, and there are people that do have it, but he just can't seem to
well,
find
you
it.
know what would be tough? I mean, my gosh, I'm trying to think how old I was when they did that. I'm thinking maybe I was about 12 years old. So I mean, this certainly predates handheld cameras
Oh
and
yeah, no,
video
but they did
cams.
some
So
professional filming because I'm not sure if you knew, but they were hand selecting some people from the musical to go on and do, be it a bigger production of Jesus Christ Superstar, or there was a choice to go overseas, and my
yeah,
father had that option, and he
wow,
passed on it because he was chasing the rock dream at the time. But
right, right,
what is and what could have been, you know?
yeah. Yeah, but and tell me if I'm wrong, but my memory is that your mom, Ellen, played Mary Magdalene. Am I
Yes.
right?
Let me let this cat out because she keeps
Yeah,
talking. And I don't
go,
want her.
go.
Go ahead, sweetheart. Go on. Sorry, Jerry. Go. Get out.
Not at all.
I tried in every way to make it so she was not stuck in here. And somehow, when I went to go get, I went to get a guitar to show you later.
Yeah,
Uh, she got in. Sorry about that. Let me move
no
it to
problem.
center again. Um,
So mom did play Mary Magdalene. Is my
yeah.
memory good?
hmm
Wow,
I've
that's
heard
cool.
sections of it. I've never seen actual. I saw a little video footage on, I think on YouTube. I found something that was just a small section of it, and but you can't like really see anybody. But there
Yeah,
are some out there. There are actual videos of it and audio recordings. I still had a vinyl version. My father and I guess a lot of the cast went in and recorded, and they pressed to vinyl, but it's so scratched up. Um,
yeah.
I think it was Jesus Christ is Alive and Well, or something like that. Um, but so yeah,
I,
just
I I have a
intriguing.
I have a vivid memory of being at at a performance, but to be honest with you, Trav, I couldn't tell you where it took place. Um,
There's a lot
I
of those in my past now too. I
yeah,
mean, it's like it's once you get past a certain point, like you try and think of. I'm pretty good with memories on shows and stuff, but I know you and you've been to
a lot.
many shows, so it's hard to place it. You know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, you kind of started me down this path about family and music. So, as you have mentioned, you come from a musical family. So, please share with us a little bit more detail about that. Okay, your parents, uh, Jesus Christ Superstar, but I know we have other cousins who are in the biz, so to speak, and incredibly
Yeah.
talented. Some who you have collaborated with. So please share with us about that.
Well, I've collaborated with my father many times throughout the years. I mean, you know, and I actually played on something he's been working on recently with a good friend of his that's an incredible guitar player, David Snyder, incredible writer, guitar player. And I got to add some guitar on something he's working with another writer named Michael Menard, who did a lot of movie scores and I believe he was a music teacher in Nanuet as well. But it was really cool to play on his stuff and it's really cool to go back to these people that I looked up to. Like for instance, there's a and you've probably heard of them, but they're an incredible band tribute band called the Band Band,
Oh, sure, yeah,
and
yeah,
Gary Solomon, who plays bass and basically does a lot, the Rick Danko of the band, you know.
yeah,
Um, he is somebody I grew up around. I mean, he worked at the power station in New York City. He engineered and produced countless records. You know, he worked on from Billy Joel records to jazz records that anyone who's a jazz head would be blown away that he was even in the room. But he played stand up bass on something I'm working with for a friend of mine. well, actually, we've created a project together, but the artist's name is Soren Song. And formerly it was Steev Richter, and he released a bunch of albums. So this is leading me into that my cousin Laura Tsaggaris actually is working on some vocals to possibly add into one of the songs for that project.
Very cool.
And Gary Solomon played stand-up bass on it. So I love keeping things in the family. I had a band project called Davenport Cabinet for years.
Sure.
That my cousin Tyler Close, who is an incredible singer and songwriter, we collaborated together to write some songs that to this day I'm super proud of. And funny enough, Laura, who I might add is her own singer and songwriter, sang with both of us on a song called Simple Worlds, and it's still one of my favorite songs that I ever had a part in writing. And so keeping it in the family is a big deal to me,
Sure.
These bands that I'm a part of become family anyway. I mean, dysfunctional marriages at times, but they are, I mean, I am Coheed Cambria is a family, and LS Dunes, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
And he's basically my other main band that I'm now part of, and has become a family. And it's like you start to understand these people just as much as you do your immediate family, because you live with them in buses and you're constantly with them.
No question. Hey, I just want to give your father proper props. Your dad's name is Chuck Close, yes?
No, Chuck Stever.
Chuck
closest Tyler's.
I'm confusing cousins. Yes, Chuck Stever.
If Chuck Stever's music, my father's music is, I actually went back. It was a really cool project. I found tapes. He had a band prior to the hip hop group, which I grew up loving as well. Which funny, you have Chuck D, and then you have my father, Chuck Stever. But there was a band in the late 70s and early 80s called Public Enemy. David Snyder played in it. Rick Nunziato, Rick Snyder. So that band recorded with Gary Solomon, was part of that, played bass, but he also engineered and produced. And basically I took the tapes. Larry Alexander was the main producer, who still does production. He's got a long list of albums that he produced in the past. I don't know if you know 914 Studios, where Springsteen did like Greetings from Asbury Park, and
well, that was up in Blauvelt, New York, was it not?
Yeah. So when that closed down, they took all of the equipment from Nyack's from 914 Studios and moved it into a place called Nyack Sound.
Okay.
And Artie Resnick, Larry Alexander, they basically were running this place. Artie Resnick wrote Under the Boardwalk, co-wrote Yummy Yummy Yummy, I Got Love You, stuff like this. So my father was working with all them. I mean, it was quite a promising time for them. I mean, it was, there was a lot of things that were going on the side that got in the way, of course, in that, especially in that era. But it was incredible to hear the music directly. I found the original tapes from Nyack Sound. To hear that music that was created at that time, I wanted to do everything I could to transfer it and remaster it, and I did. I did that 2 years ago, and I put it online, and it's under Chuck Stever, Rick Snyder and Friends Public, and the album is Public Enemy, because I'm not going to use the band name Public Enemy, obviously.
Sure. Been
well established now. But my father's other albums I took and got mastered and worked with David Snyder to have those put on. And there's one called For the Children, which actually you'd like hearing all of it. It's a trip. It really is. But For the Children is Chuck Stever and Friends. And then there's another record, Learning to Fly, which is my father made.
Well, I tell you, Trev, when I go to edit
Waiting to Fly, not Learning to Fly.
When I go to edit this, I'll put in links for all your dad's stuff, because I myself wasn't aware of that. I would love to hear some of that stuff.
I'll send you a link after.
Yeah, please.
Of the albums.
Fantastic. You're blowing my mind by bringing up that studio where Springsteen recorded in Blauvelt, New York. Now, the last
And
time I
Janice
was up
Ian,
there,
like countless names. Janice Ian and
oh,
David
it's
Snyder.
incredible.
Actually, David Snyder recorded acoustic for that Janice Ian record, and David Snyder was always on call to play for a lot of bands. Do you know who David Snyder's cousin is? If you think of the name Snyder, Dee Snyder.
Dee
And
Snyder.
and having that connection, he connected me with Dee Snyder, and Dee Snyder actually said he liked Coheed, and it was really cool. But he signed some things for my kids because they were big Twisted Sister fans. So he signed some stuff for them, and I hope to actually go see him or Twisted Sister itself play with the kids eventually. It would be awesome. But there's that connection too. It's pretty amazing. There's a lot in Rockland County and in Westchester and all over this area. There's a lot of musical. I would always go up to Woodstock, like Claudio was going up there in our teens a lot, and we had a connection through, and that's how we connected with Josh. And there was all this, of course, all that magic in Woodstock and Kingston, and there's so much that happened there musically, but people tend to forget because we're so close to Manhattan and we're so close to New York City in general and Brooklyn, that a lot did happen in Rockland County and in, like Kiss recorded rock and roll all over right in Nanuet. Like, there's all these things that went down right across the bridge in Westchester. Like, countless bands were created there. The Good Rats, like, New York Dolls had all this, history here. Like David Johansen, like it's.
Yeah,
sometimes the
blowing my mind with bringing up the Good Rats.
There's a lot of great punk and hardcore bands that came out of Rockland County. It's like, sometimes it gets, because we're so close to the city that like we're in the shadow of New York, living in the shadows.
Well,
a lot of that in my life.
Again, going back to that studio in Blauvelt, New York, now, or at least the last time I was up that way, it's a diner, unfortunately. The building is now a diner. But what's really cool, Trav, is that there is a historical marker that tells you that is where Springsteen recorded.
Yeah, that just went up a few years ago, honestly, Yeah, that just went up a few years ago.
And another thing that jumped out at me, mentioning Dee Snyder and Twisted Sister. The first time I ever saw Twisted Sister was just down the road from that recording studio on Route 303 in Orange County, New York. Rockland County, New York. And it was the old Orange Pub, which I'm sure it's not the Orange Pub anymore.
No, but I know where you're talking about.
Yeah. But I saw Dee Snyder in this little tiny, I imagine, Twisted Sister in this little tiny joint. But it's amazing. Like you say, a lot of great music coming out of that area. And it does not.
I watched a documentary on them, and they really were quite incredible with a lot of how they created their own career. Like, like they. Yeah. And it does remind me quite a bit of what we ended up having to do, especially with Coheed and Cambria, but a lot of the bands in our era, and a lot of my friends and the band members that are in LS Dunes, like we all connect on that. Is like we jumped in a van, we promoted ourselves, we made it to the point where eventually a major label said, you got something going, maybe we want to back this, and that's what Twisted Sister had to do. I mean, they came out in like an era where major labels weren't jumping on rock quite yet. The British new wave of heavy metal was just kind of coming around. Ozzy was solo. Like there was plenty going on in rock, but they didn't know where to fit them quite yet. And so Twisted Sister basically cut out their own little corner with their own promotion. I mean, one of the things that blew me away was them talking about how you could buy like 50 seconds of radio, and they would choose the strongest. Like, you would buy that radio usually to say where your show is and promote the band. But the way that they did it is they played the strongest, like 45, 47 seconds of their song. Yeah. Okay. And just at the end, real quick, said Twisted Sister coming to, whatever club. And that way, all the people thought, holy mackerel, the Twisted Sister's on the radio. Like, they must be doing awesome. And it created a hype,
Yeah, no question.
And those kind of moves, like, it's pretty genius.
I don't want to go too far off a tangent
No,
here,
no, I'll stop.
but something you brought up.
We can have an episode where I just dork out about all sorts of, you know.
We could have many
It
episodes
could be
with
from
you, my
folk, and we'll talk about this later too. It can go from folk to country to hair metal to hardcore to that's just like who I am. The only thing that I lack a bit is in jazz, but I'm trying to learn a little more. That's Zach Cooper from Coheed. He'll give you all that.
Well, very cool. Very cool. Well, look, Trev, I'm super interested. I do believe I have some idea what you have been influenced by. When I say influenced by other musicians, but what were you listening to as a kid, and what are you listening to now?
So I had a steady flow of like classic rock around me, obviously, and I had a steady flow of like folk. And there was a lot of pop music. You know, my mom liked a lot of pop music, whether it be a Laura Branigan or a, you know, you know, my 3 favorite albums when I was 4 years old, walking around with my little Fisher Price boombox, were the Beatles' Abbey Road, the Police Synchronicity, and Christopher Cross Sailing.
All right.
I would just walk around bumping those 3 albums. And those are still 3 of my favorite albums, you know.
Yeah.
But I grew up around aunts and uncles that had all sorts of different music, you know. My uncle Richie Stever would be listening to like a bunch of jazz, like he'd be listening to the Weather Report or something, and then move into Born to Run or, you know, something usual for that time period.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, because I'm born in '78, so it's like, you know, I caught the end of like what a lot that was going on, you know, in my uncles and aunts, and I had no siblings, so I'm listening to what my parents and aunts and uncles and cousins are playing, you know, and a lot of that was the '70s classic rock, you know.
Sure.
But you know, I have a really great memory of my Uncle Ralph. You know, it's interesting. So my Uncle Ralph, my Uncle Richie, my father, like I said, my Uncle Richie could be listening to the Weather Report, but the thing he was they were huge fanatics for Leonard Cohen. Leonard Cohen was like ingrained since I was a kid, for not only the poetry aspect, but also just a lot of my finger picking and stuff is from that early Leonard Cohen finger picking kind of, let's face it, I got like 2 tricks finger picking wise, and one of it's the very flamenco like kind of thing, and that's because I heard it in Leonard Cohen's music.
Wow.
But I can remember my Uncle Ralph, you know, cheering on Bob Marley as he played on a late show, and listening to Bob Marley constantly. You know, I remember the album Confrontation came out when I was probably about, I don't know, 6, 7, and I remember my father and my uncle listening to that album constantly. And then that album had hits on it. Like that had Buffalo Soldier, and you know, it had a couple of actually really important songs.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to remember like what that show was. I don't know, but I remember him cheering and getting super excited and saying he looks good. And I think that's because he was already diagnosed with the cancer. So but I mean, like, that's just all these memories of music. You know, my father had a moment of getting very into country music, because when I was younger, I grew up on a steady diet of Bob Dylan and the band and stuff in the car with my father.
Sure.
You know, with in between me begging him to play the Labyrinth soundtrack that David Bowie did, I'd be listening to the band, or, you know. But he also got into like deep into the classic country, Willie Nelson, George Jones, Waylon Jennings, you know, and a lot of good classic honky tonk kind of country. And so that's somewhere in my DNA. Like, you know, I can't find myself in a lot of, like, you know, what I've heard it from country in the past 30 years, of course.
No.
But I see that there are elements. A lot of it's just turned into sounding like a lot of rock to me. But
pop music.
But I mean, I understand the appeal because I can hear those old school moments, and, you know, and I grew up around a lot of like also funk and stuff like that. Like, I mean, the meters and stuff like that being played around me has a big impact, you know. And I don't ever mention these kind of things as much because I don't think about, like, I was an only child that got sent around to a lot of different places because my parents were working, you know,
Yeah.
or my dad was chasing rock dreams or country dreams or whatever you want, you know, like he was out playing or doing whatever. And so I would end up in these places where I would hear, and music was so important, that I would basically kind of form memories through music. You know, I feel nostalgia when I hear any sort of sound. I wrote a song years ago called Nostalgia in Stereo, and the whole thing was about traveling through time, through sonically through music. And you can play Time After Time, the Cyndi Lauper version, of course, and I am put right in that place, which I have a great story about that. And you can stop me. I'm
no, don't. I don't want to stop you.
But we were recording actually an LS Dunes record recently in January, and I went into the room where Time After Time was written. Cyndi Lauper sat with I can't believe I'm forgetting the name, but I will remember the name of the co-writer. He was in a band and was running the studio there. But when we walked in to look at it, they said, you know, Time After Time was written here, and a lot of it was recorded. And just to be in that room and feel like these sounds that I can play so many moments of my life to were created right here. There's something just mind-blowing about that.
Yeah.
And I was around many different sounds as a child, just going from place to place. You know, basically my brother from another mother, and his parents were like parents to me. Rory Hohenberger, who he played music. His father, Gary Hohenberger, played in bands with my father. He's actually on some of that Public Enemy stuff I described. And so I grew up listening to him performing in the basement, playing guitar. Like, you know, that's where the ZZ Top love comes from. That's where you know, I'm lucky. I got to be around a lot of music. So, you know, and then you fast forward, and I got step siblings eventually through my stepfather.
Yeah.
And they brought punk and hardcore, you know, the metal that I found. Some I stumbled on my own, but were from friends. Claudio, the singer and guitar player of Coheed Cambria. I would say that a lot of great metal I found through him, you know. Like, I remember I listened to Faith No More as a younger kid, and then I kind of fell off on it, and I never really listened to their album Angel Dust. And he brought it over to my grandmother's, my father's mother, and one day, and he just threw it on a boombox. For those of you who wouldn't know what that is, that's the cassette player that you can carry around. He threw it on, and my mind was blown. And I was like, how could I have let this band go? And from then on, we were Faith No More fanatics. And that had a big impact on Coheed, you know. You know, my mother, when you talk about metal, my mother had a copy of the original Black Sabbath. It was the original pressing, because she went and saw them at a festival, and she was a Black Sabbath fan.
Wow, I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, right. She was flipping pancakes one time for my now wife and I, Abigail, and she started saying, "My name is Lucifer, please." And I was like, "What the?" And I turned around, I was like, "Mom's singing Sabbath," and Abigail was like, "What the?" And I said, "Yeah, she loves Black Sabbath. She loved Black Sabbath growing up, you know." So I found that record when I was a kid, and it was that little lull of when I didn't. Music was all from the devil. And it was like, where they called it the satanic panic of the 80s.
Yeah.
You remember that? Like,
yeah, sure.
So for a kid with OCD, you know, I had other things going on. I was petrified. I was like, I can't go near. I went from loving rock and roll, metal, even the albums that I described, Abbey Road, I wouldn't listen to anything. There was to me, it feels like it was a year, but it might have only been a few months when you're that young.
Yeah.
But I just remember, like, I couldn't look at the Black Sabbath cover. I had bought Somewhere in Time by Iron Maiden. That was the first record I bought with my own money. And my stepbrother told me, you know, a bunch of kids did a seance and burned in the house to that. That went right back in my mom's records next to that Black Sabbath. I'm not going near that, you know.
Wow.
But then a year later, maybe less, I was obsessed with them all.
Yeah.
And then it was just heavy metal from then on. And And but you know, the things like Neil Young is my favorite songwriter. You and I have discussed that, and
Yes, yes.
I found that not on my own, because I definitely heard my parents listening to, whether it be Buffalo Springfield, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, or Neil Young himself, or any of those projects. But something about Neil's music, you know, maybe it's because it also counteracted with what a lot of us fell in love with in the grunge world when I was like 13, 14, you know. But whatever happened with that, I just became a Neil Young fanatic, and with good reason, because he's just such an incredible writer, and he takes so many chances. And I think that's part of it. Like, you know, one of my favorite records is Landing on Water from the 80s. And he's experimenting with more of the keyboard sounds and stuff on that. And I even like his trans albums. I'm a fanatic. Like, one of my favorite movies was the one he did with Devo, Human Highway. And it kind of makes no sense. And you could tell that they're all out of their minds, but I just love it. It's inspiring to me. So, you know, I can't say enough. I'm a record collector. I can't say enough about how it matters to me to have different sounds, you know?
Sure, sure. I think you and I are very much alike musically, in that our taste span many, many different genres. You know, one thing I've always said about Coheed and Cambria, Trav, is when people have asked me who aren't familiar with the band, you know, what are they like? Name someone I'm going to know that I think they sound like, or their music is in that genre. I've always said that if Roger Waters was, you know, 30 years old again, he'd be in Coheed and Cambria. I just
cool. That's a massive compliment for me.
Well, that's always how I have felt about it. And well, Pink Floyd and the Peter Gabriel Genesis are my two bands that, you know, if stranded on a deserted island, that's the music I've got to have.
I mean, I would be lost without it there too. It's just so hard. Like, you know, you and I could talk about Pink Floyd for hours. I mean, I'm a massive Pink Floyd fan, as you know.
Yeah.
But you know, the Genesis side of it, I'm probably, you know, out of the group of people that I know, everybody that I know, aside from some bands I've toured with. I remember touring with Mastodon, and I know that a couple of those guys specifically did love a lot of the older Genesis. Funny enough, when we were doing No World for Tomorrow, and Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters recorded the drums, it was amazing. The other thing that was amazing is we shared that love for Genesis in general, but the Peter Gabriel era. And he brought all these DVDs, because at the time it was still, you could buy or find DVD, you know, bootleg DVDs of concerts that weren't, they're all on YouTube now, but he brought those, and it was, you know, all the set changes with him changing into different masks, the Fox, the, you know, the supper time theatrics, the whole thing. And I remember just in between takes of doing No World for Tomorrow, all of us sitting and watching these Genesis DVDs and kind of dorking out. And I went through a bit of you know, we were by Amoeba Music in LA then, and they had a lot of those kind of DVDs you could buy. And I remember buying a bunch of that kind of stuff, and just diving so deep into so many bands, you know, whether it be in punk and hardcore or even in the prog world. I remember McDonald and Giles record becoming one of my favorites. Do you ever listen to that record?
No.
That is the drummer and keyboard player of King Crimson. When they did In the Court of the Crimson King, they weren't as satisfied with what that became. And great documentary if you haven't seen it yet.
I have not.
You got to watch that the King Crimson documentary. It's a great one. But I have massive respect for Fripp and for anyone that's ever been a part of King Crimson. But it really puts perspective into a lot of things. And that record was kind of like, they released it, strangely enough, right around the same time, if not too long after the McDonald and Giles record. And it's a great record. They almost
definitely got to check it out.
They could be, they coincide with each other, because you could tell that it was, you know what I mean? I just remember getting that record and with Taylor Hawkins. Matter of fact, I lent him that CD, and then I bought it again. And I was like, let him keep it.
Well, Robert Fripp came back onto my radar fairly recently when he appeared on Daryl's Place.
Yeah.
And
I didn't get to see that footage, but I heard about it.
Oh, it'll take your breath away. Just absolutely incredible. And something I have to share with you, Trav, I don't know if you are aware of this, but talking about the Peter Gabriel Genesis, there is a tribute band, but they're much more than that. I don't, that kind of really doesn't give them the credit they deserve. But the name of the band is called Musical Box. They're French Canadians. They are huge. I actually took your mom and your stepdad Bruce. We miss you, Bruce. To a Musical Box concert in New York City some years back, and what a blast we had. I know Bruce didn't particularly appreciate it. He was a Beach Boys guy. You know, he was pretty basic when it came to that.
Well, that's where the Beach Boys love. How could I forget mentioning that before?
Yeah.
I mean, the Beach Boys, you know, I always liked the Beach Boys when I was a kid, but once he came into my life, and, you know, it's hard to listen to a little bit, some of it right now still, since losing him, but he definitely gave me this whole new love for everything to do with the Beach Boys. And since then I go deep with it, and we'll talk about it. Like, there's some books that I actually have read recently. One of them has to do with the Beatles, but we'll talk about that later. But I mean,
and one other band I have to mention before we move on to another subject is when I went to your wedding, I distinctly remember you guys getting really excited when Kiss was playing. You actually, and I think you even did karaoke, if I remember, of Kiss.
Probably, we probably did Love Gun or something. But but you know, Kiss has become a big thing with my kids too. They say Kiss is for the kids. Kiss was not my favorite when I was a little younger kid, but I grew to love them, funny enough, more as I got older and respected them, and realized how much incredible music they've also released. You know, my kids immediately jumped into that world, and sadly enough, I was touring a lot for the whole summer and the fall, and I was able to meet my family in Knoxville to go to one of the farewell tours, and we were so excited, and they had to cancel because Paul Stanley got sick, and I had to fly back out to the tour. I was on Ellis Dunes tour, and they had to fly home, and it was pretty heartbreaking. So I still hold out hope that they'll do something. I know that they're going to do this AI thing, but I hope that Kiss does something live action kind of concert that I can still bring these kids to. But I mean, but like, can you see the ace over there?
Oh yeah.
My friend Frank Iero from who's in LS Dunes and from My Chemical Romance gave that to me and the kids. And then check this out. This is super cool. There's a bunch more upstairs, but my kids got so into Kiss that, I mean, we have like memorabilia. Like,
very cool.
This is just what's down here in the playroom. I'm not going to do that. Like, there's so many things that are already down here that I could just go start collecting. But my kids are massive Kiss fans. I am, you know, gotta respect it. You know, Coheed Cambria has a connection in the sense to, you know, Kiss was all about doing the comic books and the theatrics, and they fit into that world too, you know. So I know that Claudio has a deep love for Kiss as well. All of our friends do.
I think Kiss,
they're New York.
I think musically Kiss does not get the credit that they deserve.
No, they don't.
Because of some of the theatrics and silliness over the years and the marketing and what have you. But hey, in my book, Ace Frehley, top shelf guitar player.
I know.
In fact, you know, we're going to talk about guitars next, and I think all of us who have owned instruments over our lives, there's always one that we regret letting go, selling,
I have two or three.
And that is mine. I had a Ace Frehley signature. It was the Epiphone. It wasn't the Gibson, but it was the Epiphone signature Ace Frehley. And I so regret ever giving that one up. But yeah, big fan of Kiss for sure. Though I've seen them many, many times, Trav, but only the original lineup. I've never seen them without Ace and Peter.
Yeah. Wow. Lucky you. I've never seen them with either.
Yeah. I've seen Genesis many times, but never with Gabriel. I've seen Gabriel many times.
Once, never with Peter Gabriel, of course.
Yeah.
And I saw Kiss only once with, but not with Ace or Peter. And that was for Claudio's bachelor party before he got married. Yeah. So that lets you know how deep it goes.
Yeah. Well, look, Trav, clearly you and I have a common love for the instrument, for the guitar. I know you have a significant collection. I did and still do. When we moved from New York to Pennsylvania, I didn't want to move 70 instruments, so I probably sold about a third of them off, but still have a fairly significant collection here. And where I'm going with this is, over the years, the many times I've seen you in live performance with CNC, I think every single time I would be hard pressed to come up with another guitar. You've always played a Les Paul gold top with a Bigsby floating bridge. And I'm wondering, is it safe for me to assume that is your go-to guitar? And if so, why?
That one guitar that I do have a Bigsby on. I got a Les Paul, the nicest guitar I had bought so far in life. Claudio and I went to a Guitar Center and decided, you know what, we're going to be on the road a lot. Let's both get nicer guitars. He got, I believe that's when he got his Explorer. It might have been a Flying V at that point, but that was early days of touring. He had an Explorer by then, I believe, but he might have gotten a Flying V in that. But I got my Tobacco Burst, which now does have a Bigsby as well. But I used that guitar on the LS Dunes tour these past, I kind of have a rig for each, but I do keep my gold top with the Bigsby always on tour with Coheed now. I've used that on probably the last 4 Coheed records, but this record that we're working on, that we have been working on for quite some time, even in the demoing, I've used a couple of SGs that Claudio has at his house.
Sure.
I've used a couple of Les Pauls, other Les Pauls, but the gold top was my standby. But I'll be honest with you, I just went and recorded an LS Dunes record, and on the Coheed tour that we did for No World for Tomorrow, and I brought it down here, I bought the nicest guitar I've ever bought, and this is an 81. I think you can see it okay. I got to go this way. Custom 81 custom Les Paul.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I will not be taking this on tour.
Okay.
I made that decision the other day, but I'm using it on all records. And that became my go-to, definitely in the LS Dunes sessions. Funny enough, aside from that guitar, the other one that I used so much in that session, and this is the most recent recording I've done in a studio, so this is just to give you, was it the gold top before that? Always. Yeah. But this past, I actually used a gold top with a Bigsby. That was a signature model from a good friend of mine who was out working with Coheed and was working with us at the studio for LS Dunes, but also plays in a band called Against Me. His name is James Bowman. And James Bowman had a signature Les Paul. And I'm a big fan of his playing anyway, but, you know, sometimes you forget, all the work that goes into the sound. Yeah. When you're like me, and you can kind of be, a little ignorant when it comes to stuff. James is one of those people that is not ignorant at all when it comes to, he's able to build guitars. He's able to, he's able to fix any kind of gear. He builds his
Yeah.
own pedals. So his signature guitar, that it has this fantastic sound. So it's basically like everything I love about my Gold Top that I have out there, which is in Brooklyn right now in Coheed storage, which I
Right.
have been, Gerry, I've been thinking about going and getting it because I love that one so much.
Yeah.
But this, having James Bowman's guitar in the studio was like, oh, this is even better. So
Wow.
do I love, nothing against you, Gold Top, if you can hear me in Brooklyn, but yeah, I've kind of found these other guitars that have not taken its place per se, but the cool thing is now I can feel comfortable about the Gold Top always being on the Coheed tours and having that perfect sound out of that there, but having these other guitars to use. And I might add that the Bowman is not mine. That's his signature. They actually, as Gibson can do sometimes, which Coheed's experienced it, they've been very kind to us many times.
Yes.
But also, it's almost like you can relate it to a record label where sometimes people go in and out of the business and then you have no connection to the people anymore.
Right.
And James had this guitar that was going to be like, released and everything, and who he was dealing with, it kind of fell apart in that sense. So now he just has a signature Les Paul that's, there's worse things to have. I don't have a signature anything. So it's like, it's really cool. I loved using it because I'm a fan of his music. So I'm using something from somebody I respect, but also it sounds fantastic. So it's good.
No, very cool. So I shared with you the one that got away, my Epiphone Ace Frehley signature. Is there one over the years that got away from you that you regret? Is there a guitar you missed?
Yeah, I had a so I did have somebody come up to me when we released Vaxxus 2, A Window of the Waking Mind record. It's about 2 years ago, and they came up and they said, "Hey, is this your wine red Les Paul?" Had a Bigsby on it, and showed me a picture of it, and then showed me pictures of myself using it. And I was like, the headstock had broken on it, and we moved out of Warwick, and I guess I got a little fanatic, like I should sell guitars because we have the extra money to do this, that, and my wife would be like, "You don't do that. You don't need to do that right now." But she couldn't stop me. And so I had sold that one. And when that person was there, I was like, "Yeah, that's it." And they're like, "Well, we could work something out if you," and I was like, "No, I don't. It's okay. I sold it a long time ago."
Yeah. Kind
of knew that there would be, they were very nice, but I kind of knew that it's like, oh, that's a can of worms. I don't need to open.
Yeah.
But there was also a guitar, a Johnny A signature guitar that I used. And I used that when we did our first Neverender string of shows where Coheed, when we do albums or when we do, like we've done this cruise, we call it the Neverender.
Yeah.
After the song that's from our first record. So we do like the Neverender series. But the first time we did that, we did 4 nights doing all 4 of the first albums. And I used the Johnny A during that. And the only issue I had with the Johnny A was like, I just didn't think it, I didn't think it stayed in tune very well, even though we kept trying different tuning pegs. And there was a way. We were so young. And it's like, I mentioned my friend James and Kevin Allen, who works with Claudio and builds guitars with him. And those guys now could take that Johnny A and make it perfect.
Yeah.
It's just, we were so young. We didn't know yet. I'd say I was probably only 28, 29, and I sold it. And I wish I didn't, those are 2. And then also a black studio guitar, Studio Light, piece of shit. But it was the first Les Paul I had, and it was the one I even used on early Coheed stuff, which was Shabuti at the time. But 2 of those songs made it on to Second Stage Turbine Blade. One of them being a song called 33, and another one called Delirium Trigger. And I used that black Les Paul on them, and I should have kept that. I didn't need to sell that, but it's like hindsight's a hell of a thing. And it's not like I was selling them for drugs or something. No, it was me being an OCD crazy. I shouldn't have so much stuff, and we need it. And my wife saying, "You don't have to sell these things.
Right.
I had a banjo that I wish I still had that. I had a mandolin. I used a lot of that stuff on the early Davenport Cabinet. And because we were moving, and I was like, well, and the Davenport Cabinet project was named after a room that I had up there, a studio in Warwick that I had. And I was like, well, I'm leaving here, so probably get rid of some of this. It's just like, makes no sense. So do I wish I had that stuff still? Yes, but I've let it go.
Yeah, that's a good attitude.
There are some things that I don't even want to think about that I sold or let go, and I'm like, why'd I do that?
Yeah. Well, look, the last time I was at Taylor Guitar, and they're in the San Diego area of California, and I'm going back now many years, a decade or more since I've been there. I actually saw a poster of you and Claudio in the Taylor factory.
It's funny. I was there and I didn't see that poster. I was only there 2 months ago.
Yeah, well, I'm going way back, Trav, way back. That poster was there probably 10 years ago.
Oh, okay. They switched up.
That's the last time I was at Taylor. But my point being is clearly you had or have an association with Taylor. One of my favorite clips of you and Claudio doing acoustic work is the band I Shall Be Released. To me, it is absolutely breathtaking, and everyone who watches this program should definitely see that on YouTube. But you guys are playing Taylor guitars. So my point being is Taylor your acoustic go-to, and if so, why?
You know what my step-niece said after she heard us do that at that Taylor, I remember? She said, Uncle Travis sounded like Elmo. I was like, oh, I gotta get rid of that one.
No, I don't agree.
I love that song, and I love that we played it and we got to sing it together. But anyway, what was I gonna say? We've used Taylors for years, and we still use them. They still are the best sounding acoustics. But I gotta say, they're even better now. And I went to the factory actually through Anthony Green, who sings for LS Dunes. He uses Taylors. He does a lot of acoustic solo stuff, and with the band Circus Survive he was with, they use Taylors. So it was almost like I reconnected with Taylor by going to their warehouse factory this time, and they've done a lot, man. And the cool thing about Taylor right now is all the employees that were there for years are now running it.
Oh,
Bob
nice.
Still part of it, like everybody, the family's still part of it, but it's like, you know, they made the joke that now the lunatics are running the asylum, but it's not. It's so well organized and so welcoming. And I played some of the new guitars. I'm gonna also go out on a limb and be honest here. I played a guitar and they were like, yeah, you can, that's gonna be coming to you. And that was 4 months ago. So it's definitely a guitar that once I will buy myself anyway.
Right.
They were, yet again, just like Gibson, they were always very kind to us. We've tried some Gibson acoustics too, and they're beautiful and they sound great. But I gotta say, when it comes to acoustic, Taylor is definitely my choice. And I know Claudio's choice a lot of the time too. I can't speak for him, but he just recently did his prize fighter tour, and I think that he was using Taylor's a majority of the time.
Yeah.
What
I've always found interesting, Travis, about Taylor versus Martin is, of course, Martin's claim to fame, everything being handmade, hand done. But Taylor, quite the opposite. They are very much into robotics. But the quality of the two guitars, in my opinion, unmatched. So there are two different approaches to guitar building, hand versus robotics, but equally come out with incredible instruments.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I
will share with you.
You get the chance to go.
Here's my 354 CE, which is a Taylor 12 string.
I got that same one down at my studio space.
Yeah.
I played it
Yeah.
just 2 days ago. Those are beautiful.
Yeah.
And they record really well with the mic.
Yeah, at the moment, it's my only Taylor. I had a mini Taylor for years. I used to travel with it a little bit, but traveling with an instrument, at least how I have to travel, it just became too cumbersome. So yeah. Unfortunately, now I don't play as much as I would like to because I'm on the road as much as I am. But nonetheless, I love that 12-string from Taylor.
Yeah, that thing's beautiful.
Hey, buddy, I remember, again, I'm going way back. I remember you guys doing some endorsement work for Boss pedals. I'm really curious what a Travis Stever Coheed Cambria pedal board looks like in live performance. Can you kind of give us a quick breakdown of what is your go-to pedals for live performance?
It's really boring now because I'm using the fractal units. So I just have presets of everything. For a while there was that we had somebody actually build us these racks that were incredible, that had like the presets inside that would trigger all the pedals. Yeah. V-Man made those for us. He was a guy who worked with us for years. Matter of fact, he is now the bass player of Slipknot, and he has been for many years. But he was an incredible guitar tech who worked for Mastodon, worked for us, he worked for a bunch, but he had built these racks, and that had endless I had a Fender blender on there. I had I had all these different sounds. I mean, Earthquaker devices. There were Bosses on there. I believe I had a delay that was Boss. We did that Boss thing, and that was really cool. And I do love Boss pedals. There's been a lot of things that have been creatively for all of us in the band that Boss has come in handy for. But, I really kind of spread my wings, and definitely for recording have used an array of different pedals. I mean, since we did that Boss thing, which was, I believe, still Victor's House of Music on 17. Especially for guitar players, the amount of gear that has come around, and that doesn't take anything away from Boss. There's Boss standbys, but Boss really hasn't. They don't release a lot of new stuff. They stick with their standbys that some of them just can't be beat, no matter what boutique pedal company it is. But I've gone to all these pedal companies throughout the years and been gifted pedals that are like, holy, this is incredible sounding. and this was made in somebody's basement. I said, James, our good friend, creates, Bowman, I believe Bowman Endeavors is what, but I'll send a link to that so that if you want to tag it. But
yeah, definitely.
He creates massive sounding pedals that I don't want to pit something against each other. I don't want to say, hey, you're not going to get that out of Boss. I mean, there are Boss pedals that are incredible, but yeah, I'm glad that we got to do that back then. But yeah, there's many things beyond now that would be part of a pedal board, whether it be live or recording in the studio. But we use Axe effects, we use fractal units, and so it's pretty boring. It's not boring if I had my fractal in front of me right now, and I could describe what sounds I want to get with each with each of the settings.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned preloads, and what's interesting. Some time ago, and again, I'm going back at least 10 years, if not more. I bought a Line 6 amp. In fact, it's in my field of vision right now, my Line 6 amp. And I had no idea that this was going to happen until I literally brought it home. But all of your Coheed Cambria stuff are preloaded into that amp.
Yeah.
I
remember doing that. I remember doing that. And that's what's funny is that amp is great as well, but even Line 6 has released a lot more gear since then. And not that Boss has, it just in different ways. But it's just gone beyond that. The fractal units we use, I mean, the amount of the amount of sounds you can get that are so unique and
Yeah.
also so close to whatever you desire is incredible.
Right. Right. Very cool. You know, Travis, I've always been interested in the business side of the music business as well. And I'm just curious. So line 6 has your guys' sounds preloaded into their amp. How do you benefit from that? Is there a
Just as much of a
financial benefit?
promotion at that point in our lives, because we're going back 15 years now.
Yeah, yeah.
That was just as much of a promotion for the band, because somebody
Okay.
could be flipping through and say, wait, this is the sound for Welcome Home. What the hell's Coheed Cambria Welcome Home?
Gotcha.
Why am I looking at Travis or Claudio's sound for these songs? Oh, well, let me go take a listen to it. Or somebody, it worked for line 6 because somebody who loves Coheed Cambria wanted to try and get that sound. They go buy that amp. So it worked for the artist and, you know, the manufacturer
Gotcha.
equally.
Yeah. No,
And I know there's a question later about it, but that's the same thing with the rock band thing. It's the same thing with being part of video games, getting your music in anything.
yeah.
You're going to wind up having it so, yes, they get to use your music to promote and it is beneficial to them, but it's just as beneficial to the artist. I mean, getting on that rock band thing all those years ago made it so people were hearing this song because whether they liked playing the other songs more or not, they were going to get tired of those songs and they go, fine, we'll try this Coheed song. And then they might have fell in love with it. And that did happen, you know, like, and we wound up having a lot of people find out about the band through that video game. So, and, you know, that was through the label, like, or you know, or promotions.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah. So like that kind of stuff, it's the same thing with even the Boss, like, pedal thing. When we did that, I remember it was very good for us because, you know, whether or not we were going to use Boss strictly for the rest of our lives or not,
Yeah.
you know, people were going to relate us to this iconic pedal company.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you mentioned when you did the Boss endorsement that it was Victor's House of Music on Route 17 in Paramus, New Jersey, which I do believe now is a guitar center, and I think has been for quite some time. But I could remember when you did that promo with Boss, there was you did some Q&A, and at one time, tell me if I'm wrong, you actually worked at Victor's, did you not?
Yeah, I worked at a place called Technoserve Industries that was in the back.
Okay.
And I got fired. I got walked out.
That's where I was going to go with
it. Yeah, it definitely was like an accomplishment to come back as an artist that people cared to talk to. It would be in print in that place. In
I
their
remember
defense,
telling
that place, I did not get along with the owner at the time. He just rubbed me the wrong way in certain times. But I mean, maybe it was just a time in his life. I know it was a time in my life. I was taking many credits. And I would ask for time off because I was taking very many credits at Rockland Community College, and at the same time trying to get ready to tour. And when I would take the garbage out, I definitely would go and stand at the guitars for a little too long and stare at guitars. So firing me was understandable. Walking me out was not. What do you think? I was like, what do you think I'm going to do? Like, you know, it's like, I'm not going to be one of these disgruntled workers who's going to start tearing the store apart. I mean,
but I could remember when you did that interview and it was published. I read it to your mom. I said, "Wow, I didn't know he worked there." And I said, "You know, he says he got fired," and she was horrified that you put that out into the public domain. You know, I said, I told your mom, I don't think he has to worry about it anymore. You know?
Yeah.
That's funny.
He's still probably worried.
She's still worried.
Not gonna get a job at Victor's. It's okay, Mom. Victor's is closed. Technoserve might still be in the back there, and at now Guitar Center. I forgot to look. I've been to that Guitar Center a few times. Technoserve might still exist. No offense. I hope the kids are running it. You know, I wish the best for everybody. I don't. I didn't then. Now I do.
That is where I bought that Epiphone Ace Frehley signature Les Paul. Well, it was Guitar Center.
I probably saw it when I took the garbage out. I might have even played it on their
There you
watch.
go. There you go. Well, look, Trav, CNC was formed all the way back in 1995, and you guys are approaching 30 years together, with 3 of the original 4 members, which that alone is an incredible accomplishment when you look at the music business. But where I'm going with this is, what do you attribute CNC's longevity to? You guys have what I call fanatical fans, and
Yeah.
obviously that's a huge part of it. But what has kept you chugging along all these years?
Well, I think the unique aspects of the band definitely keep the fanatic fans. It keeps them engaged. I mean, there's the comic books, there's the concept, there's a whole bunch of different aspects to the band. It wouldn't be 30 years; it would be more like 25. Well, we're about 2 years probably from it being a 25 years of the band, because I would say Coheed Cambria really began. Claudio and I have been in bands together since we were kids,
Right.
12, 13. I mean, I think I was 12 when I first played with him, or 13, and he was 14. And I had a couple of years in high school. I got hit by a car, so I had like a lot of nerve problems, and there was a couple of years in high school where I didn't even know if I'd play guitar again, and I wasn't in bands for a couple of those years. Some of it was just I didn't know what I wanted to be. If I wanted, I still loved music the same way I had, but I didn't know if I fit as in being the musician. Kind of a dark it that way, because music's so important to me. But I definitely found my way back, and when I found my way back in a band with Claudio, and it was a band that he had at that point called Shabuti.
Yeah.
And that was a 3-piece until I joined back in. And when I joined back in, the music started to change, and eventually, the drummer at the time, there was recordings with the drummer that we had at the time, Nate Kelly, and 2 of those songs wound up on Second Stage Turbine Blade, but they were still considered Shabuti songs up until the moment we signed with Equal Vision Records, and we decided on a name change. And we went through a few name changes before winding up with Coheed Cambria. This all makes sense when I get to the point. But really, the band began when Josh Eppard sat behind the drums, to me. The sound began to develop more. And that's when we chose the name Coheed Cambria. So I'd say the minute we were, and that's not taking away from Shabuti was this other band. I wouldn't even consider myself part of that. That band had a longevity for a while. They played a lot of shows,
Yeah.
Nate Kelly, the drummer of that band at the time, there's a lot of work put into a lot of songs that were created with that band that I wasn't even part of. I mean, they made an EP at one point. I think that I only just did like some screams in the background, like hardcore screams and stuff. And it was great music, but it changed once Josh was behind the drums. And it especially changed once Claudio had a side project called Coheed Cambria. And it was more what Prizefighter Inferno is now. And we were looking for names and nothing would fit. And we all said, hey, you got that side name, and if you want to, we'll adopt that name as the band name because it's so interesting. And it was like, well, if I'm adopting that name, then therefore, we're taking this concept. And at the time, we didn't know really what that meant. And there was a couple of years of like, why do we have to have this? Like comic books and all this shit. And I got to say, eventually it became, hey, it sets us aside. Whether people were saying, what, the comic book band and talking down about it, or they were excited about it, it had them talking about it.
No doubt.
And it had them thinking about us as a band. And then lo and behold, we get this whole world of fans who follow the concept just as close as they do the music. The music is the important side to me, obviously, but I've always backed the concept side because I know it's this major part of, a best friend's life, that I'm also sharing the sonic part of,
Right.
But the formation of the actual band Coheed is with the joining of Josh Eppard, which would be coming up on 25 years. I'd imagine I would think the release of Second Stage Turbine Blade for me marks 25 years of Coheed and Cambria.
Okay.
But the longevity of the band, I think it's Claudio's story. He's the main songwriter, but for me personally, and Josh would say the same, I poured my heart and soul and life into melodies and stage time with Coheed and Cambria. So the longevity comes from feeling that connection through the music that way for all of us, and feeling the need to see it through and make sure that we keep proving ourselves as somebody, as something that's worthy of having these fans. Because sometimes, you can get lost thinking, well, I mean, do we even deserve this? Like, well, I think that constant need to create comes from wanting to feel like you deserve, the listeners. You deserve, that's part of the drive. The other drive is just to create art itself. I have to put these on. I'm starting to get weird things. Sorry.
No,
just for everybody who's saying, I got LASIK surgery yesterday and my eyes are freaking out a bit. And if I look away from the screen, it's just because.
Absolutely, please.
But yeah, I would say
Travis, if I could just take what the last few sentences that you said and kind of boil it down, I think it clearly shows that you guys give a shit, to put it quite frankly.
Everybody does. I mean, Zach Cooper, I think that you're going to ask this next, so maybe I should save it. But, Zach, the bass player, is, as new as he is an integral part of what the sound and what Coheed and Cambria is, because he's been now part of it long enough. And even I'd say from the moment he was on the album Afterman, that was solidified what Zach is. So there's also the factor of strength in members, whatever they're bringing, whether it be melodies, performance, knowledge of music itself. Zach has that, he's very well, he's very well educated in music theory, but he's one of those people that's well educated in music theory, but also can go with the flow and jam. And it's hard to find that a lot. A lot of times people can be very well educated. This is my experience, and I'm not well educated in music theory. So it's easy to see that the theory can get in the way for some people.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, some people are great technicians, right? I mean, but when an opportunity comes to jam, to just be to free flow, they have a problem with it because as they lose their technical ability, or their technical structure, I should say, they don't know what to do. Yeah, so that's exceptional when you find somebody that can be both, quite frankly. Well, look, Trav, CNC and your careers have taken you all over the world. I have seen CNC perform in 3 different countries. I'm proud to say that. Of course, the United States many, many times. Most recently in Canada. But Patricia and I traveled to England many, many years ago to see you guys very early on in your career. So what I'm curious to know is, has there been one country, one place where you were just blown away by how fanatical the local fans were? And is there a place that you guys haven't played yet that you would love to play?
It always blows my mind to go overseas, and especially in the UK and stuff. And it's just very much like being here in America, in the UK, with a lot of the shows and the welcoming fans. And there's a lot of places in Germany and Ireland, and which is cool because I'm primarily German and not Irish. So when you go there and you feel welcome by those places, but we keep going to everywhere and in hopes that it just keeps growing. I mean, while we can, we still want to. I've never been to Greece with Coheed or with any band, and I would love to go there. I've never been. Funny enough, Coheed never played Alaska, and I've never been there with of course, any other band. And I'd love to play Alaska. I'd love to play Africa, Egypt, there's so many areas that we have not been to yet that I would love to go to. There are places in South America that we haven't been, but the demand has to kind of be there. And and if it's there, we go. You know,
Sure.
whether it be with Coheed or now with LS Dunes, I'm willing to go anywhere that we are welcome and somebody wants us there.
I'm surprised you haven't found your way to Alaska yet. Have you ever been to Alaska,
I have
musically?
not. That's why
No.
I would love to go. You know,
You got to go. I'm happy to say, I was into the Iditarod, you know, the dog race for a number of years.
oh, I would love to.
I had just become obsessed with it, and in fact, I had become so obsessed with it that Patricia and I went to Alaska and took musher lessons, where we literally ran our own 6 dog team out into the wilderness. And Trav, I'm not. I don't consider myself a religious or spiritual person, but it was as spiritual as can be. To be out in the middle of the nowhere with silence and just 6 dogs, just absolutely. I know you're a dog lover too, so you can appreciate it.
Yep.
Just so cool.
I would do that. I would love to do that.
Absolutely.
What a cool experience.
Oh, absolutely. It was a blast. So you had mentioned the Guitar Hero. That's the product, right? It was Guitar Hero, that kind of simulation game.
Rock Band was the one that we were
Rock Band. I'm sorry.
I said Guitar Hero too because I saw it in the questions, but we were in Rock Band. I think we had some in Guitar Hero too, but we were on Rock Band. Rock Band was the big one that we had, and that was a big deal for us. And that was through the label. That was through, you know, as it would be, you know, whether it be through labels, publishing companies, they will come with an offer and say, hey, there's an opportunity. We're asking bands to be a part of this. Would your band like to be a part of it? And I'm really glad that we had the chance.
Yeah. What was, again, me just being interested in the business side of things as well as the musical side. Once again, was there a financial gain associated with that, or like with the other situation, was it more of a promotional, just to get your name and your music out there?
There was financial, of course. There's always like an offer for something like that if the band has enough of a name. But in that case, I seem to recall that it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't something that you could go buy yourself a new property with or something.
Gotcha.
You know, you're getting a pretty good payout for something that's beneficial to everyone, especially the band. And we couldn't even have known how it was more beneficial than we even imagined, you know? So
sure.
I am very appreciative of that. And I think that an important thing had at that time, it had just started, and it's more important than ever that, you know, getting music involved in any kind of media placement is the most helpful now, because we are a society of screen.
Yeah.
So if you're locked into a video game, or you're locked into you know, your iPad, your phone, whatever, if the music's in the background, it's gonna catch the ear more than it is on a radio anymore. It just is.
No question. Yeah, I mean, I remember that Guitar Hero and Rock Band era, and they were huge. I mean, people were going crazy for that stuff. The only thing that annoyed me, and just to be honest with you, the only thing that annoyed me about it is people thought they were playing the guitar. Stop it. You know?
Yeah, and then and then they tried to go and play real guitar, and they're like, "This isn't working the way it did." I know. I know it, because being a guitar player and trying to go play it, it was very difficult.
Yeah. Well, look, Trav, in my introduction of you, I mentioned that you are the lead guitar player for Coheed and Cambria, but I think, and I hope you agree with me, that I think the more accurate description would have been the co-lead. You know, there have been bands, you know, from back in my day that had co-lead guitar players. The ones that always come to mind are Thin Lizzy and Judas Priest. But I think CNC, at least from my perception, falls into that category where both you and Claudio go back and forth, and often simultaneously take the lead with the guitar. So where I'm going with this is, where did that come from? Was it a conscious decision that the two of you made at some point, that, you know what, we're going to share this load with the lead guitar? Help me with that.
Well, it's more of a natural progression. You know, we love all the bands you mentioned, but in our styles of guitar playing, you know, and writing, there's like nothing off the table, right? We don't want to have anything off the table. So in order to try everything, sometimes you have to do everything. So
Right.
it's like, you know, if he's playing a bunch of leads on something already, you know, and it sounds really good, but I hear that there's some sort of rhythm I can lay underneath it, that's what I'm going to do, you know. If like he already has the idea for a lead and I'm going to cop it and play it, then I'll do that. But if there's room for him to be playing his lead and me playing a lead or trading off, then, and it sounds good, then we're going to do it. I mean, it's really a matter of what's best for the songs. I think at one point, I mean, I guess I could name check Good Apollo 1 and Welcome Home, of course, and some of the songs on there where there were a little bit of like a dual kind of like go back and forth with solos kind of thing. And a lot of people do love that, but you know, that kind of just came on as like, you know, this could be really cool to add in this section and fun. It was a natural thing. It wasn't, you know, yeah, just to go back to what I originally said, like nothing's off the table. So in order to try everything, we both need to do you know what I mean? We need to do it and see which one works best. And sometimes both works.
Is there a competitiveness to it at all?
Of course, anyone who would say that there isn't, like, you know, a competitive, it's not competitive, but I mean, of course it becomes
well,
like,
a healthy, friendly competitiveness.
Yeah, but I mean, there's the side of it that's like Claudio's the main songwriter, like, you know, so sometimes it's just like, what am I going to do to add to this song that he already probably could play? I mean, he's this incredible guitar player that's the main songwriter. Sometimes there's like an upstream kind of thing for me there. So I wouldn't say competitive, but it's almost like a race to try and get something in there that is going to excite him and that I'm excited about that he didn't already think of.
Right. You know, I always think I'm a big fan of the band Jethro Tull. Can't believe they're not in the Hall of Fame. Can't believe they've never even been nominated for the Hall of Fame. Finally, at least Foreigner getting nominated. We could have a whole show just on my annoyance with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But the guitar player for Jethro Tull, the original most famous lineup was a gentleman named Martin Barr. And Martin used to say when they were in the studio arranging and writing music that he knew that if there was a space, he had to immediately fill it with a guitar solo, because if he didn't get something down within seconds, Ian Anderson was going to fill it with a flute solo. So there was that competitiveness, and but it kept, like he says, it kept him on his toes. He knew at any moment he had to be ready in order to fill that, because if he didn't, someone else would. Ian would with the flute.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, were there fun competitive things? And like, I remember making the Welcome Home things. It was like, oh, we're gonna do an axe trade-off, like, you know, or lead trade-off, and we had fun with that, and we have a lot of fun with those kind of things. But my position can be, you know, that in order to fill those spaces, you know, for like, and Ian Anderson's a good example because he's the main songwriter of Jethro Tull.
Yes,
he's got like a lot of ideas from the get-go with these songs that he's creating. And so when you're another musician who's trying to come in and be part of that creative process, you're kind of like, oh, well, what can I do here? And it's a race. So it's not even the competitive side. It's like, oh, I got to get there. I got to you described it very well with just trying to get in there and trying to excite it. When I make Claudio excited with writing certain guitar parts or melodies to the songs that he has, I mean, I think that was always my relief, which is much fewer and far between now in life. But when we would create things from the ground up together, especially if it's based on a riff I have, well, I'm safe because my riff's there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But if it's already a song that he's writing and he has a bunch of riffs, well, where am I fitting? Or if it's written already and there's leads that are great that are there already, I have to put ego aside and say, no, I'm going to play what you have there because it's great already.
Right.
And I've had difficulty with that throughout my years because it's like, you have it's not just ego, it's a pride thing. It's the whole,
Sure.
It's like, what is my place? What am I doing here? But it goes back to what I said about what's the longevity is realizing the amount of melody and love that's been put into the music and friendship and just everything and respect, that it matters to see it through and make sure it's the best it can be.
No question. Well, it shows your passion, your friendship, your love for each other, your bandmates. There's no question. It comes through in the music, Travis. I'm sure you know that. You know that every time you see thousands of people in front of you, for sure. Hey, look, I want to talk about a specific venue. Again, Patricia and I have seen you in so many different venues over the years, 3 different countries, as I mentioned earlier. But a show that sticks in my memory because of the venue, not just because of how good you guys were, was the show at what I used to call the Felt Forum, which is now known as the theater at Madison Square Garden, which essentially is the basement of the main floor of Madison Square Garden. You guys opened for the Ronnie James Dio version of Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell.
What an incredible experience that
was.
Oh,
my
whole
gosh.
tour. Yeah. Meeting heroes, doing the whole thing. Yeah, the whole thing.
I can't imagine how cool that had to have been for you guys. But I also, though I did not see you play the main hall, I know you have played the main hall at Madison Square Garden. And please correct me if I'm wrong. You opened up for Linkin Park at the Garden, am I right?
Yeah, well, what you used to call the Felt Forum, which is now the Madison Square Garden Theater, the first time that we opened up for Heaven and Hell, I think, was possibly after we had opened the big room.
Right. It was way after.
Yeah, with Linkin Park. We did the Linkin Park thing first.
Right.
And, Linkin Park were incredible to us. What a cool band and what a cool opportunity. But at that point for us, we were pretty well known, especially with our own fan base, but we hadn't grown as much as we have now. And
Sure.
So we were pretzel and beer music for people to kind of just drift in. And we got some fans out of that, which was incredible. The Heaven and Hell thing, we were a little more established, and it was hard because there's a lot of fanatic like Sabbath fans and stuff that are like, why do we have to hear this? But they were patient, and it was an incredible experience. We did headline that theater, the Madison Square Garden Theater, after I think we had the band Glassjaw with us. And we did do that, and that was an incredible show. And then we came back to the main room again with Slipknot.
Yeah.
And Slipknot, that was a great show with Slipknot, but still, Slipknot fans, who I believe at the time were being really patient and nice to us at Madison Square Garden. Were not as nice in certain other places throughout the States. Slipknot were great to us. They were very welcoming. You could tell that they liked the band. But it was a weird fit. We all knew it was a weird fit. We decided to do it. But the Madison Square Garden show went well enough. We were pretzel and beer. We were pretzel and beer music. But people were welcoming. They were patient with us. But we're coming back to do it with Incubus now. And I think that the band in a place, first off, we're going to play a set list that's going to be really exciting. And second off, we're in a place now where we've grown, I think, more than we ever have. At least it feels that way. I hope that's the way. So for us to return, even though we're supporting, I feel like it's going to be a hometown show at Madison Square Garden that we're going to have the experience that we kind of always wanted in that room. So I'm really looking forward to it.
For those of us who have only made it to singing in the shower, Travis, we dream of walking out on stage at Madison Square Garden, or at least those of us from the Northeast. I'm sure there are other venues throughout the world that are as iconic, but growing up in New York and New Jersey, Madison Square Garden to me will always be the mecca of music. And I've just often wondered what that vibe must be, what that physical reaction must be for you walking out onto that stage.
Adrenaline. It's adrenaline because it's scary. It's still scary to me. It's scary to go on at any stage, but it's adrenaline, especially with someplace like that. And it's like, let's just do this. I mean, we did a show that size that will be similar with doing main support for My Chemical Romance a year and a half ago. And I remember the adrenaline feeling. And with LS Dunes, we did some shows with a band called Pierce the Veil, and they were those size rooms. And I just remember that adrenaline. Coheed does massive size rooms too. Like on our own, we've done amphitheaters, and it's adrenaline. Like when we did No World for Tomorrow, it was very comforting because it was kind of back to going to theaters, and you know, there were some bigger rooms, but it's like that comfort zone of like, this is just all our people. But when you go to a room like that, and especially if you're supporting another band, it's just adrenaline. That's it.
You mentioned adrenaline, but before you said adrenaline, you did say the word fear, and I don't want to jump all over that, but you know, look, I'm not at all comparing what I do to what you do at all, but I'm in front of audiences every day. I publicly speak for a living. And, you know, they always say that one of the greatest fears that most people have is public speaking, right?
Yeah.
But I am more comfortable in front of 1,000 people than I am in front of one. One-on-one, I'm very uncomfortable, but you put me in front of a room full of people, and that's where my comfort level begins. So where I'm going with this, Travis, is, you know, I've always, I don't call it fear. Like you said, it was an adrenaline, maybe an anxiousness I'll have before I go out and do what I do. And I've always felt if that ever goes away, I think that's going to be my indication that I'm done.
I agree with you.
And I no longer give a shit. I think
I agree with you. It's part of what makes it so that you can go and do. And it's part of your character up there. It's part of my character in jumping around and being a maniac, is that I amped myself up with that anxiety and intensity and fear, because there's still stage fright, to get to the adrenaline where I'm just doing it. Yes. I mean, part of I speak for probably most people that go on stage. You have a harder job in the sense that part of the stage banter can be the scariest thing, because playing the music, jumping around and being maniacs. I'm sorry, I have to keep looking away because it is hurting my eyes. And I'm like, I feel like such a douche with these glasses. No. And also looking away. But they just said to watch this, to literally not watch the screens.
Yes.
So I feel like when you go and speak in front of people like that, like, it's more scary than anything I could ever think of. My wife Abigail is actually been taking a bunch of courses at NYU, and she's getting her master's, and she's going to do she has to do a whole thing tonight where she does a presentation, and she has to do it in front of her class, and that sounds horrifying to me.
Yeah.
And I play music in front of thousands of people, but I'd be petrified to do that. I'll do it if it's something. That's the thing, is it always became, I'll do this because, and then there's the rush of getting it done. There's the rush of getting it done.
Sure.
So I think that I'm addicted to that too. I'm addicted to the rush of getting done with it. Sometimes I can't wait till after the show, a lot of the time, because I know what that rush is of, well, it's done. Did it.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
And I'm sure you have that rush after you do any presentations.
You're no done. Question. And I'm always my worst critic, and I imagine you are as well.
Oh, yeah.
You know when you killed, but you also know when you didn't kill. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
Hey, look, going back to venues in Madison Square Garden, there was another venue, an iconic one that Patricia and I saw CNC at, and that is Radio City Music Hall. And Travis, I'll never forget the moment when Patricia and I were walking up to the theater, and on the marquee of Radio City Music Hall, it said tonight, Coheed and Cambria, and it took our breath away. And you know, we're not in the band; we just know you guys. So I have to, and I remember at the end of that performance at Radio City, CNC as a band got up, turned around, and you guys took a selfie, literally took a selfie with the crowd. I'll never forget that. Clearly, it was a very meaningful moment to you. So tell us about that. What was it about Radio City? What was it about taking that picture? Please try and share with us mere mortals what that moment was like.
Well, I mean, mere mortal. I'm mere mortal myself, and that's why it was so. It was, come on, it's Radio City.
Yeah,
this mere mortal was like, holy mackerel! I'm part of this band that gets to play Radio City, and I think we all felt that way. We had also overcome a lot of obstacles. Numerous times we've done that in Coheed and Cambria, but in this case, you know, we had just released an album called Afterman with our new bass player, Zach Cooper, who was a great, you know, addition to this band. And we had our original drummer, Josh, back. He had gotten engaged that night. He asked his now wife, Tammy, to marry him that night.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. So we had like, Radio City had a lot of massive, you know, moments.
Yeah.
Massive moments. Sorry, I got a little lost. But it was also, I think, that just the feeling of, God, a year prior to that, or a year and a half prior to that, we were in one of those, can we continue moments again?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and here we are at Radio City, and I'd say it was 2 years before, but still, that was like kind of a marker, because I think that was like towards the end of touring on the Afterman records, and so it was like, wow, we did this.
Well, you mentioned Zach Cooper, and I want to talk about Zach a little bit. So Zach's the new guy, though he's been in the band, I think, since 2012, but technically the newest member. I'm really curious, how did Zach get onto yours and Claudio's radar? How did you guys become aware of Zach?
Zach was suggested by our good friend Chris Bittner, who engineers and produces, and he engineered a lot of early Coheed records, but he engineers and produces at a studio called Applehead. And Zach had recorded with his band and done some session work with Chris. Also, Zach was in a band with Claudio's cousin that Coheed in its early stages actually played with. But that kind of wasn't even at the forefront of the decision. It was more Chris suggested him. And he also worked at Alto Music in Middletown, where we would buy a lot of our gear, especially Claudio, because he lived in Middletown at the time. So he dealt with Zach a lot, and he knew that he was a really nice guy. Yeah. We tried a lot of people, big names too. But Zach came in, and it wasn't just his playing. You know, the playing was the primary reason, you know, primarily why we chose him was his playing and his feel, but it was also a person we could relate to, and we felt like, hey, we're basically friends with this guy and we didn't even know it, you know, like this guy's like the kind of guy that we would hang out with. Yeah. And it's worked out amazing because of that, you know. And it doesn't take away from, never does it take away from the contributions that other players have made. You know, Mike Todd was, you know, is, you know, an incredible bass player. It's just, you know, things fell apart with that. And, you know, you wish somebody the best and hope that they're doing okay. And you have to move on. It's either it dissolves or you move on. And having Josh back and putting him with this new incredible force being Zach, it goes back to why we were so excited at Radio City. It's like, look what we've accomplished. And here we are, you know, 10 years beyond that.
Right, right.
Sorry, my deaf cat is going off the rails in there.
Do you need to go get her?
No.
Okay.
Finish it.
Well, you threw a name out there that was a blast from my past as well, and that's Alto Music in Middletown, New York. Another great instrument shop that I used to frequent quite a number of times. I did not realize that Zach worked there. Zach so where I'm going with this, The luthier that I used to use, I used to buy a lot of crappy old K craft guitars. In fact, I had at one time the largest collection of K instruments, which predates Martin here in the United States. K at one time was the largest manufacturer of string instruments in the United States, long, long before Martin came along. But anyway, I used to collect these things, and most of them would come to me in pieces. And I would bring them to a guy named Scott Kopek. Scott Kopek used to run the repair department at Alto. And I do remember him telling me about Zach that I don't know, I think they even may be related somehow. But
they just, I think they were just really good friends.
Okay.
And they were really, but I don't know. I don't think that they're related, but maybe.
Yeah.
But that is one of his. I've heard that name many times and met him, and we did a thing.
Interesting cat.
When I was with LS Dunes on tour, actually at Irving Plaza, we did a thing with Alto Music, and yeah. So all the people from Alto Music have always been very supportive of all things Coheed, and
very cool.
That's where we got Zach.
Hey, Travis. So I want to talk about, you've mentioned it more than a few times already, the new band LS Dunes, which I don't know if you want to call it a side project, new project, whatever it is, but
it's a band itself. You know, it's like
the media is describing LS Dunes as a super group. I don't know how you feel about that, but it is other people of your stature from other bands that people recognize, like My Chemical Romance and what have you. So please tell us how that came about and where you guys are going with that now.
Well, it's a full-fledged band, and that's why we tour. You know, I basically, I've been splitting my time up between doing Coheed, which is still full-time on its end, and LS Dunes. I mean, LS Dunes was born out of a time of uncertainty. LS Dunes was born out of the time of all of us being in lockdown, all of us not knowing what was next. Touring was off the table. So it was like, let's just send stuff to each other. And if it sucks, we could just stop. But here's the group of people. We all are friends from touring throughout the years. Let's see what happens. And within just a few songs, and this was just instrumental at the time, we figured out that we were in love with what we were creating. And it's a very different thing than Coheed and Cambria. Because with Coheed, you're going to look at it this way. You're going to look at it like, you know, LS Dunes is a full-on collaboration. Wherever it comes from at first. Everyone is writing the songs from the ground up. It's like everyone throws out foundations. A foundation can start with a bass line. A lot of songs have. This foundation can start with one of my guitar riffs, one of Frank's riffs. Some songs have even started with a drum beat. Anthony can send him and just an acoustic guitar, and all of a sudden it turns into all of us writing over that. That was through the internet. Like, that was through the cloud, like sending stuff back and forth, you know, originally. And then getting together, we figured out, oh, this magic is here when we're in person. You know, and that, like I said, that's the difference with, you know, with Coheed, the foundation's there. Claudio's going to have a foundation, and it's about adding to that and seeing if you can make it stronger or trying to get into it. I mean, have we had songs where we build things together? Yes, Claudio and I, but I mean, especially in Coheed's era now, like basically the foundation's going to be there. Like, and so it's nice to be a part of something where the foundation can come from any place and then just chase it. You know, the paint can be thrown at the wall more. And so that's what LS Dunes, that's what it is. And it's a very important thing for me. And, you know, we just got the experience in January of going in, and mind you, we used a lot of demos that were us throwing things at each other online. But what we wound up doing was sitting and going through it together in a room and building on it together. It's like we did a process of 3 different recordings. We did the demos. Anthony recorded some vocal ideas and wrote some lyrics to some of those demos and arranged them a little bit with Will Yip, who produced it, became like a 5th member or sixth member in that band. And being the sixth member, his job was to lead us kind of towards, he guided us towards what was best with these demos. But then we did pre-production of re-recording those demos in pre-production. And then once we had everything right, we actually re-recorded the songs. So I haven't gone through that process in many years. I think that there are certain things that we left that were the same, very much the same as the demos, because you're always chasing those demos. Sometimes it's better to just record the songs as they were from the demo, you know? But this album is definitely a representation. There's a lot of sounds all over the place. I can relate it to more to things that I've done elsewhere in my life, and the fact that it's not just like, there are points where it's super heavy, but there are points where it is brought down to, you know, just a vocal and a guitar. You know, it's cool. I'm looking forward to people hearing it, but they're very different beasts. And I guess I didn't know that it would become this other full-fledged thing that I'm in, you know? It was born out of a time of uncertainty, and I could have never known that it became as important as it did to me.
Yeah. And you guys are on the road now, are you not?
I'm not. No, I'm home right now.
No, and I know, but Ellis Dunes.
Oh, yeah. We're going to go do a bunch of shows overseas in May.
Yeah.
And there'll be more announced. We finished the record, and it's about mixing now. And to go back to Coheed, there's material for a new record that's going to be starting to come further and further along, and that material is incredible. I mean, you know,
very
Claudio's
cool.
written some of my favorite Coheed songs some of the guitar that I've gotten to add to that are the best things that I think that I've ever been able to put in Coheed. So,
well, that's
there's
exciting
a lot of
news.
exciting things on the horizon.
Very exciting news, and thanks for sharing that with our audience, Travis. I really do appreciate that. Hey, look, buddy, we're coming to the end here. A couple of last things, and I'll let you go. So, Travis, please, when you're not in the studio, when you're not on the road with either Ellis Dunes or CNC, what do you find enjoyment in? You know, you're a married man, children. Tell us what turns you on outside of the music world.
Being there for my family right now.
Yeah.
Like when I can be home and be with my family all around, like family, you know, my mother, my children and my wife first and foremost, but my mother and my, you know, seeing my father, just thought, as you get older, as you know, you start to figure out that time goes really fast. And
yes, it does.
And in losing Bruce, you know, I guess I just have kind of learned, no matter what I have going on in life, or no matter what kind of misunderstandings and stuff, it's important to keep the people that I love, the personal relationships, as healthy as possible. Healthy as possible. Everything's complicated, right, Gerry? But I mean,
everything, especially family. Family can be very complicated.
Yeah. So what I like to do is, even from the road, try and concentrate on keeping connected. I don't know how people did it with children without FaceTime before.
Yeah.
But when I'm gone for a long time, I try and keep with FaceTime. But when I'm home, I try and concentrate on being dad, family man. I still collect records. I still constantly write. I'm writing all the time when I'm home. Yeah. I'm writing, like I said, I'm working on guitar parts, whether it be for Coheed or it was in the studio with Ellis Dunes. And I have this new project with my friend Soren Song, and we've written 3 or 4 songs since I've been home, and Laura Tsaggaris might be involved in that. You know, I try and stay busy. Busy.
Well, you know, I just want to say something, and hopefully I'll get through it without being too emotional. But you mentioned your mom, and you know, family is complicated, and family can be difficult. And my life has certainly been that way. I am estranged from most of my family, but your mom is probably one of my favorite people on this planet. And she has often been the one that has kept me connected to our family, even when I was maybe consciously trying purposely to drift away. I just want to give a shout out to Ellen, and just love her so much. And obviously,
Love you,
um,
Mom.
love,
She'll
yeah.
watch. She'll
And
watch. I reduced all cursing in this because she sees countless ones and I have the filthiest mouth ever. And so,
and as important as Ellen was Bruce, and it was such a shock for me, to lose Bruce. It seemed to happen so quickly, at least from my perspective. But Bruce being your stepdad, and just such a supporter of you, of CNC. I can remember in the early days, helping you, get a van and that kind of stuff, and
yeah,
pack the van, and seeing you guys on your way, and that kind of stuff. And
it's my other dad.
Yes,
I was lucky enough to have two fantastic fathers, and
yes.
It's unexpected when what happened.
Yes.
He had a lot of health issues forever, but
Yes.
Being that it's unexpected, it's also always hard to accept. I'm not fully even there yet, and it's been over a year. But like I have all these moments of realizing the positivity, and the positive influence, and what kind of positivity everything that he gave to me comes out. And we've been talking about music this whole time, even in there. Yeah. And not just because of a Beach Boys influence, no. Right. Because of work ethic and just overall outlook in general of how things should be done, with having personal, being more personable and being more, making it so it's easy to connect with when you're doing business.
Yeah.
Being trustworthy, being somebody that people can count on. And that's what Bruce, that's only a few select things that Bruce had, because he was full of surprises.
I'll tell you humor. Oh, no question. I'll tell you something fun about Bruce, which sticks with me to this day, and it gives me a pleasant moment every once in a while. Bruce loved Willis Jeeps. That's the original Jeep. Willis, Willys, was the manufacturer, Willis Jeeps. And the reason why Bruce loved them so much was that as a teenager, he drove one when he worked at Laurel Lake, which was a swim club that I was a member of as a kid.
Oh, I didn't know you were a member of that lake, but
in Park Ridge, New Jersey. And so because I'm a car guy, Travis, I go to shows all the time and auctions and what have you. And whenever I see a Willis Jeep, I can't help but think of Bruce, and it's just the most pleasant memory of him, because he was so joyful about those Jeeps.
Yeah, no, I love it. I had two different worlds. He was very into golf, as you know. He's very into Beach Boys. Yeah. Very into and I am not a gun person. I do not like guns, but I respect and cared about his love of guns, and it was just always funny to me that I did have these very two polar opposites. My father's not against guns. I definitely want more gun control in the world, and I think we all can agree on that finally. Yeah. But I grew up in where one bathroom would be, on one side of the family, and this is even taking my mom out of the equation because you have Better Homes and Gardens upstairs and this and that, but downstairs you have Golf Digest, maybe a book about Brian Wilson and guns and ammo. Over at my dad's, you have it could be a book about Leonard Cohen or the Rainbow Gathering book, because he's an old hippie, books about Woodstock, blah, blah, blah. But I had all these different aspects of my life, and they were such polar opposites, but they connected on one thing and love. And that's really the most important thing. And it was being understanding and loving. And I grew up with parents, not your average life of what is average anymore. What is, it's always complicated, but I grew up with that as the main point, the focal point in life is love and understanding. So I got lucky for that.
And I'll take you back one more generation. Your grandma Rose and your grandpa Larry, who were my godparents, so special people. So you come from a long line of very, very special, loving, caring people. I could tell you that firsthand, my friend. Hey, look,
Right on.
buddy, we're at the end, Trav. I just want to give you one last opportunity to share something with our audience. When this goes to air, you'll see at the very end of every program, I do something called Gerry's Pick of the Month, where I just share with our audience something that I've discovered in the last 30 days, a book, a documentary, an instrument, a tool, whatever it may be, but something that has really blown me away and turned me on in the last 30 days. And I've started to give my guests the same opportunity. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that you've discovered lately that just was an absolute turn on and you'd like to share it with our audience.
I read this book. I've been reading a couple of books. So, but the one book that really got, I actually dealt with Lyme's disease, and I didn't even know that. And I had all these issues with it. I went on the antibiotics. It's really seemed to help. So I got it all going on, right? I got the LASIK sunglasses on. I had Lyme disease. I feel better from the Lyme disease, but I was kind of down for a bit there and having to recover from that. And I was reading a book about the Beatles, roadie slash engineer. He wasn't even an engineer at the time, but he was one of their right-hand men, Mal Evans. And the book was called Living the Beatles Legend. And it's not just for people that are Beatles fans. It's intriguing. This guy's story is intriguing. It's both intriguing, heartwarming, and heartbreaking. And I started reading, and I got it as a gift from Abigail, my wife, and I got it for Christmas. And I started reading it, and I was like, why do I need to know about this guy's childhood and his past? This guy who just worked for the Beatles. And I'd say I got about 3 chapters in, which I'd tell anybody, keep going, because once you get there, you're hooked, and you just want to see, especially if you love the Beatles, but even if you don't, it's this story that's like, yeah, it captured me. And then I've also been doing Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth's book, Sonic Life, and that's been an incredible ride. Whole other, like the future. It's like maybe I'm going in the process of music. Maybe I'll do friggin' Britney Spears book next. I don't know, but I'm just going like all this music that I've loved. Yeah. And I would do that because I saw that book in Barnes and Noble the other day, and I was like, maybe I would read the Britney Spears book. I don't know, but I do love a lot of those kind of books. I recently got the Jimmy Page had a archive book that has all his gear and stuff, so I've been reading that. And then also there was a documentary on We Are the World, and that thing was it was really cool.
I haven't seen it, but it's definitely on my list. That does sound very cool.
But that Mal Evans book, what a ride. It's cool.
Well, very cool. I'm going to check it out myself. Travis, look, my brother, I cannot thank you enough for the generosity of your time that you have shared with us today. You've been an absolute blast. I just want to tell you personally, in front of an audience, how much I love you, how much I admire you, how much our family loves you and admires you. We live vicariously through you many times over the years.
Thanks, Gerry.
But
I love you too, and I can't thank you enough for all the support that you and Patricia and the whole family have always just really supported all of us in this. I mean, we've all been lucky to have family that really pushed us forward, especially when you talk about Bruce helping with the van and just everything. Like once it became accepted, all right, this kid's going to go do this either way. Everybody was like, they believed in it, and they've been, especially you. So I love you and I really appreciate it. And
well, Travis, you represent our family with great honor and love. We appreciate that very much.
I'm doing my best. I'll keep doing my best.
Thank you, brother. Keep
Gerry.
going.
Love you.
Thank you so much. See you soon, I hope.
Yeah. I'll write you after this.
Thank you. You bet. Well, you know what, everybody? I've spent the last couple of days editing this episode of BATHICA Banter with Travis Stever as our guest. And each time I've gone through it, it still blows me away. It takes my breath away from time to time, makes me laugh, makes me cry, makes me think. And what's better than that? You know, I mean, that covers all the bases. That's a good day when you do all those things, right? And just can't thank Travis enough. But, you know, going through it and editing over the last few days, there are so many things I wish that I had expanded on, and just many reasons why I want to get him back. I hope maybe in a year, if at all possible, would love to do it again, to follow up on some things that I wish I had followed up on. But again, we had already gone 2 hours. You know, I could have gone another 2 hours quite easily, but that probably wasn't going to make any sense for you as the audience, or for Travis and I as well. So again, maybe we'll do a volume 2 somewhere in the future. But so many things. What I love about doing this program is that I always learn something, and in many cases, many things from my guests that I didn't know going in. And one of them, in this case, was Travis's, one of his favorite albums is the Christopher Cross debut album with Sailing. It's one of my favorite albums. I never knew that about him, and I wish we had shared that, and I wish I had expanded on that a little bit more. I still play the heck out of that album, and whenever I land on Christopher Cross on XM Sirius Radio or something, always listen. And, you know, again, it kind of makes no sense from where he's coming from or where I come from with the genres that we are known for. But nonetheless, it doesn't matter, right? Good music is good music. And I just found that so mind-blowing that we had that in common, and I didn't know we had it in common. But anyway, so again, hope we get Travis back sometime in the future. That was so much fun. So here is Gerry's pick of the month, and sticking with the subject of music. And Travis had recommended one of the documentaries, "We Are the World," the Greatest Night in Pop documentary. So I'm gonna stick with that with that thought, and I'm gonna go with a documentary as well. And it's Stevie Van Zandt, Disciple. Now, I have to preface this by saying I was never a big Bruce Springsteen fan and the E Street Band, which is somewhat sacrilegious for somebody who spent so much time in New Jersey as I did. But I just, you know, it was not my thing, Bruce. I've learned to like him, and he's done stuff later in his career that I've appreciated quite a bit. But in his heyday, same thing with Billy Joel. It just never did anything for me. I mean, I understood the quality of it, and I understood other people getting into it, but I just didn't. So I prefaced that. So as a result, I wasn't particularly into Steve Van Zandt, and certainly the Disciples of Soul, his band that he left the E Street Band to create. But here's why I'm recommending the documentary. I am a huge Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes fan. And I think they are one of the most underrated bands of all time. Heart of Stone is just... Get that album. It tells you everything you need to know. Every freaking cut, every single cut on that album is just killer, just knockout. Take your breath away. Every single tune on that album. Most of it written by Steve Van Zandt. So that's why I'm recommending the documentary. The first hour or so, maybe even a little bit more than that, takes a heavy dive into Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes. I learned some things that I didn't know. And one thing I learned was that even after Steve Van Zandt left Southside Johnny to join the E Street Band, he was still managing Southside Johnny from afar. from wherever he was. I mean, and this was before days of cell phones and laptop computers. He was literally doing it on pay phones in phone booths from around the world, talking to venue owners and what have you. Just really interesting stuff. And it gives Southside Johnny some due that I think has been lacking, and that he and the Jukes have well earned and well deserved, in my opinion. Just great music. So that's why I'm recommending it. I'm going to say something which may be maybe get me into a little trouble, but I feel this way. I think documentaries are often like obituaries. They're full of a lot of bullshit. You know, things are seen with rose-colored glasses, oftentimes in documentaries and in obituaries, right? So anyway, not all. I'm painting that with a heavy brush, and I shouldn't. But and I think this doc may fall into that a little bit once it gets beyond. Well, I'll just leave that alone. Take it for what it's worth. But the first hour and a half or so, I highly recommend because of the documentary, because of the content of the Southside Johnny. Okay, guys. So as I speak to you, I have no other episodes of BATHICA Banter in the can. I'll be spending the next 60 days or so creating some new episodes with new guests. As I sit here in front of you now, I really don't know who those guests are going to be, but I'm excited about putting together some new programs. So with that said, stay tuned. Make sure you click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel so that you never miss any of the upcoming new episodes. And I thank you for your participation, your listening, your watching, whatever you're doing in order to listen to this podcast. We all appreciate your participation in it. And I'll see you soon, I hope. Bye-bye.